Score number 2 is by Oliver. And I just totally enjoyed this. It's really like outrageous scoring, and outrageous in a really cool way. Actually, I really like the fact that I was able to receive the Sibelius score, because I can actually do this one little thing that actually helps me understand everything, and that is hit the transposing score button, select everything, hit the optimize layout button, and see, now I just totally can read this and understand where it's at and everything. And is kind of revealing of a few other things as well. Now, I'm going to actually take the liberty here to change the bass clarinet to treble clef. Okay, that just helps me a lot. And actually, let's just do that same layout shift again. Okay. So now I can look at this and totally understand it, and my level of comprehension has just really gone up. Now let's have a listen to it. Now you're going to see that there are a few problems of balance here that are partially the fault of the playback, and somewhat to do with some things that could be balanced a little bit better in the scoring. And there are also a few things that are kind of unclear, like clarinet in B flat. This really should be clarinet 1 in B flat and clarinet 2 in B flat, right? So I just really need to know the differences. And here, you would want to mark this too here, just so we would really know which is which, right? When my eye just goes along here and looks at things. Now there is also kind of the problem here that there are just so much. You know what I mean? There are so many staves here, really, really big, really, really big scoring. And yeah, I really would have preferred to have everything as condensed as possible, but you've got so many separate functions that I understand the reasoning behind that. Okay. So anyway, let's not dwell on it too much. Let's go back to the beginning, and as we go, I'm going to have to change the justification of the page, the size of the page, excuse me, I meant to say. So let's have a listen. This is using, I think, Note Performer 1. I haven't changed over to 2 yet, so sorry, but it's, that's not going to be, any problems in balance are probably not going to be so much Note Performer. Here we go. Yeah, wasn't that amazing? I just, there are a lot of balance problems here, and some of the orchestration is a little too thick in places. But wow, I mean, just such creative ideas. I just really thought this score was very fun, and it actually is somewhat, it has very detailed dynamics. You probably heard me complaining, well, griping about how the melodies could have had more nuances, and just overall there could have been more kind of dynamic changes. And actually, this score was submitted fairly early in the process, so maybe it wasn't influenced by that as much. But anyway, there are. It's just really interesting that there are different approaches to interpreting the melody. Like, for instance, pizzicato plus slurred wins, right? So we have a cushion of wind harmony, which represents the right hand of the piano, essentially, along with this, da 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 da, right? And alongside the pizzicato. So I thought that was a very good strategy. Okay. It gets a little bit thick, though, right? I would say, like, if you wanted this to be realized perfectly, it might be a good idea to strip some of it back here and there. There is doubling on almost everything right at the beginning, and I'm wondering if a sparser approach might bring out certain colors a little bit more clearly. But and there's also, I mean, you've got an interesting collision of different approaches here. You've got slurred bass clarinet, slurred and sustained bass clarinet. You've got pizzicato, and look, what's with the slur on a pizzicato? Did you really want the player to add the note, like be fingering a B flat, or sorry, a D flat, and then add the note on top of that? Because it's quite far away. Those two notes are quite far apart on the fingerboard of the cello, and it might be possible, but the note that you are slurring up to is going to be very weak, right? So I think perhaps this was the slur was just a copy error, right? I'm kind of guessing. So yeah, so try not to slur pizzicato unless the part is very, very exposed and is very, very easy to hear. Now, there are a couple of things here. I see what you're doing here by marking harp this way, which is supposed to sound like this, right? Right, when you mark this, right, instead of hearing the bottom note. And with the playback was actually paying attention to you. It was right. It's funny. Sometimes it plays the bottom note, and sometimes it doesn't. Right. Okay. Now, the problem that we have here is not so much the notation, which is a little weird. And just the harpist would prefer to actually read the this is what they would prefer to read. Okay, I'll show you. So just basically grab that top note, delete it. This is what they would prefer to read. Now, as far as LV is concerned, all you need to do is mark the first one, right? So we can basically just take this away, right? You don't need to mark every single one, and you don't even need the ties there, right? The harpist will understand all that jazz, right? So you could just leave the tie on the first one and LV, which kind of mean the same thing. Really, it could be one or the other. But I would say just mark, in fact, just do this. LV. That's all you need, and then the harpist will read this. Now, it won't sound that on your playback. It's meant to sound an octave higher. Okay, but that isn't where the fun stops. Okay, because the fact is that you're actually pushing. Even if these are the names of these are the notes that you are intending the harpist to play and the harmonic to sound an octave higher, it just harmonics just really don't speak above A. Okay, so the more that you, yeah, you can, the harpist can try their best, but when you're getting up here to this just monstrously high note up here, this F, it's just really, really, it's going to just be nothing, which is going to sound. So you hear that kind of little almost pluck sound. So I would say that you're better off just notating the pitches. Just putting if you really want those notes to stand out, forget about them being harmonics, and then just add an ottava over it, right? And maybe make them tenuto notes, right? So this is probably going to get you more what you want, this approach right here, than to mark harmonics so high above the staff, right? In fact, like, the harmonics really sound the best within the range of the grand staff, and actually the lower the better, because they just are really beautifully juicy and they really hang in the air. But the higher you go, the less they really speak, and the less that they hang around, because as you probably have seen from the curve of the harp, they become exponentially shorter, right? They don't just become gradually shorter, as if it were, a perfect triangle, but it has this like sweep to it where the two sides come together, and so that means that the length of the string just extremely shortens as the pitch gets higher, and that actually kills the ability for these notes to sort of hang around and speak. And LV, you can write that all you like, but it won't. Nothing will sit in the air, right? The note will just kill itself very quickly. All right, so that was my lecture on scoring harp harmonics. I mean, I think that actually looks very cool, what you did before. But that's not an approach that the harpist is going to want to look at, all right? So that's all I've said about that. There's a few things here that are really kind of hard to play, like a contra player just hitting a high A in the middle of nothing, without walking up to it or anything, and just expecting to be soft on that note and blend in with everybody else that's playing. It's almost like overkill. You know what I mean? It's just like you're really hitting this note hard, when really a bassoon could, easily play that note scored an octave lower, and it's not doing anything, right? And it'll have a much better quality. Okay, so yeah, continuing on. Okay, there are several places where the melody is really getting overwhelmed by everything else around it. And I would say that would be the biggest thing for you to really focus on with your scoring, is just really making sure that things don't get overwhelmed. Now, I'm going to play these 16 bars, 12 bars. Let's play 12 bars of this from right here, okay? And I want you to listen to what the flutes are doing here, all right? And listen to where the melody is sitting. Sorry, that went on a little longer than I intended. So did you notice how the flutes were just drowning everything else out? Well, that is actually, your mock-up is not lying to you, okay? I'm actually finding that Note Performer is turning out to be pretty good for expressing balance, although, its tone quality is nowhere near an accurate orchestra. But I don't really listen to mock-ups so much to help my own understanding of things, but sometimes it's nice to just say, oh, what does it sound like? what does Note Performer think it sounds like? That can be just really fun. So there's a fun aspect to it, and there's also an aspect of like making sure that you got all the right pitches, that you didn't accidentally forget to leave out a sharp or a flat. Yeah, and in this case, I would say the balance is telling you correctly. And look, you've got this line above marked up to a mezzo forte, and that is so powerful when you consider that everybody else is at pianissimo and piano, right? So you would really have to make your melody notes come out a lot stronger. You know what I mean? Because unless you really do want that effect where the melody does get drowned out, that I've seen that intentionally in some scores. But really, I think here the nuances are too strong, and also the thing is the harp is nowhere near as loud as you think. You are trading off first violin to harp, back and forth and back and forth. That might work in an incredibly delicate texture, and you would really want both the players to be marked up. I would say in a texture like this, they should both be at P, or even, P crescendo. All right. And bearing in mind that you've got an octave here, right, between your first and second violin, and then you've got octaves in the harp with the oboe on the bottom of it, right? So the sense of jumping back and forth is right in there, is sort of built into it, and the harp I just don't feel is strong enough to I would almost say mark the harp mezzo forte and just really back off on this idea in here of having the flutes being so prominent, right? And the clarinet being right in here at, maybe just sort of pushing back and forth and back and forth. So yeah, so there were some problems here. It's not impossible, but it's pretty cool. I actually like the fact that you use flugelhorn. It's, I'm going to be critiquing the heck out of this, and you shouldn't take that personally at all, okay? But yeah, if you were a perfect orchestrator, you wouldn't need to do this, right? So yeah, so I'm just going to give you as much help as I can. Now, this was a situation where I felt the cymbal really kind of sort of pushed its way into, right here, pushed its way into what was going on and kind of distracted from the flow of the melody. Now, this is completely unnecessary. This slur here and this slur there, right? The piccolo player doesn't need it. You're trying to say, oh, you want this to be one smooth phrase, but the phrasing is built right into the music, right? You don't need to put a little slur over the top of everything. We will get it. The player will know to go da 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 da. They will know how to do that. But I mean, look, it's nice that you're thinking about slurring and bowing and everything else. It's the same thing here, just completely unnecessary. Okay, you want to go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, right? And that is fine. Now here, the accent, it's easier for a wind player to accent in the middle of a slur than it is for a string player, but you can still get that. But, they're just going to be pushing harder with their bow when they get to the F. But this is way cleaner. Right? Dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? You sort of have to think about what you really want that bow to do, right? Do you really want it to push at the accent? In that case, if you want a really clean accent, then you really have to have it be the start of another bow. Okay. All right. Now you have the same approach in here, cymbal pushing into this, and it wasn't so bad because you had trumpets. Now, I think that this is a little fussy, just so many different markings, Mezzo piano on the bass drum, I say just mark piano. When everything is like all these different dynamics, just sort of dial it back and think, can I get everything down to like one dynamic or two dynamic markings, for the entire page and just score things differently so that they naturally play in a balanced way. And I don't have to do so many things. Now, I explained this before, and now I'm going to explain this again, hopefully not come back to it too much. Okay. The wind players and brass players have separated parts. They don't know, they don't know what is happening in the score for the other players of their section. And they will tend to think that the other people in their section are sort of playing the same dynamic. Now, in the general, you do follow that. You kind of have people playing in their sections, in more cohesive, coherent ways. Okay, but the thing is, the player will be sitting. There'll be a forte mark in somebody else's part, and a mezzo forte mark in their part. And they'll be sitting next to this person who's playing forte, and they'll be thinking, wow, that's kind of a loud mezzo forte. Maybe I should be that loud, or vice versa. The person, the forte guy will be hearing the mezzo forte guy and saying, wow, this just really feels out of balance. I'll bring this back a little. Obviously, I'm playing a little too loud, Or sometimes they'll compare each other's parts and they'll say, what? Or the conductor will say, hey, you're mezzo forte, they're mezzo piano, and the strings are piano. Right? They'll explain it all for the players, and then they'll sort of find their balance from there. And there's nothing wrong with doing it intrinsically, except that it's just, it just is. It's not naturally balancing scoring, right? If you have to do a lot of work to a score to get it to behave dynamically, then maybe sort of go back and look at your approach. Like, for instance, here, I don't see why the trumpet 2 needs to be mezzo piano, right? Because it's in no danger from everybody else. I would say just mark it mezzo forte, and then the lead up here is going to be, they could all be marked mezzo forte. It wouldn't make any difference because the trumpet player is got to hit a high C here. That is going to be one of the loudest notes of this entire piece, just getting up to an accented high C. Right? So we have to really think what we are asking that trumpet player to do. Okay? And then you're going to ask him, hey, crescendo from there to a forte here. They're already going to be playing loud. Okay? Just to get that high C. So just really watch out for registers and dynamics in that sense. Now, once again, just like that's unnecessary. Yeah. Sort of distracting, and like this is all being done on one bow. Think of what you're asking the player to play, right? See, this would be better. Use this bowing strategy here and just lose these phrase bowings or these phrase bowings, these phrase slurs, right? You just don't. The players do not need them. They need to just see where their bow is going up and down, and the music will have the context that they need in order to play a smooth, beautiful phrase. And that's also part of the conductor's job. Okay, so we also ran into some balance problems coming up with this huge tutti, okay, where some of the elements here were just really standing out hugely, and it was really hard to hear where the melody was. Let's go back to here, beginning of page 4, and let's see, make sure I'm selecting that bar. Oh, darn it. All right, let's have a listen to it. Did you notice? Did you notice how this line just stuck out from the horns, right? And we could barely hear anything going on in there. I mean, you could have easily added flutes and oboes or clarinets, doubling that, or even trumpet, to sort of just make sure that this melody didn't die and get, just basically get, because it's not just the melody that's getting pushed out of the sound picture. It's also the harmony here is really hard to hear, and this alto flute is going to be completely buried, right? Because it is basically playing, a natural, right? And this is going to be playing A flat, right? And so it's just basically there's nobody's going to hear this alto flute at all, right? Okay, let's go over to here and also listen to this. Okay, so a few wild notes in there. But so if you're having these, this high B flat at triple F, right? This brass is so overbalanced compared to the rest of the orchestra that it's just going to kill everything. So I would say if you want to get up to triple F there, maybe mark fortes and fortissimos in the brass, and try not to push into it even further. Like there isn't a sense of dynamic cohesion to the gestures here in the brass, right? They're all sort of doing something else, doing something other than everybody else, right? So like you've got your horns just blasting away at this high note. This is going to just hugely dominate, and they are dying off. And then you've got a push from the first bar of the Appassionata into the middle, right? And then a further push to here with this really high D flat, which the player's going to hate doing that, right? So here you've marked a different. I think that this is a much more sane, much more reasonable thing to ask right there. But yeah, just wow, that is going to be huge. And then kind of a similar thing happening here, and yeah, just too many different things going on. I mean, but on the other hand, it's just really wild, imaginative scoring. It's very, it's over the top, and it's just really fun. So here I am critiquing it and saying, maybe don't do this, do that, don't do that. But look, don't hold back on your imagination. Just qualify it with craft, right? Okay, so there's some things calming down to pianist triple P, FFF to PPP. And the thing is like, this is going to be inaudible in the face of this triple F stuff happening at the end, right? So the dynamics need to be really heavily worked on here to get the balance to be more under control. All right, moving on. So the ending was really cool. Shall we listen to it one more time? Let's take it from this bar. Here, let's take it. We'll take it a bar in, just so that I don't have a problem with the page view. Actually, hang on a second. Sorry about that. Okay, so what we want is, let's go back to here again. And I'll try to, there we go. Yeah, so so a few things in here. I think you left out, I think you meant right here, arco solo in your cello there. And then I'm wondering if you meant arco here in the double bass, right? If this is going to obviously be arco because of the slurs. Yeah. Now, I think you also left out. So you've got pianissimo right there. So really, like, this has got to be marked. I would say mark this P, right? right? Now listen to this up against the flutes. Yeah, so yeah, it's just there's still a few, and you could even add a few hairpins in here, you know, right? Just to give it some nuance and give it some life against this kind of very static, very inert harmony rising upwards, right? So yeah, there's a lot to work on with this score. I mean, I feel that like me talking to you like this is almost like an orchestration lesson. Less of me analyzing the score to talk about how this works and how that leads to that and so on and so forth, and more just like saying watch about balance and you're gonna need to finesse this and work on that and so on. But all the same, I just think that there are some really great gifts here and a lot of courage in this orchestration. So if we just can sort of blend a sense of proportion and work on balance, especially, because your textures are very interesting, and yeah, they're a bit out of balance, but I mean the functions of them are pretty cool. So I think I'm just going to say this in particular, that I think that you will be a really excellent, a very apt, using this approach, it will be very, very apt for the next orchestration challenge. Wait until you see what I'm going to come up with then. I think it will fit your outlook, and I think some of this will fit into it better, but there will still be a need to balance things and to work a little bit more on some of the issues that I raised. Okay, but other than that, really, really enjoyed this, and look, there are more great scores on their way. So I will thank you for this, and it's on to score number 3.